Hello, everyone. Welcome. Just give everyone a second to join here. Hope everyone's having a great day so far. Well, let's get started here. Um, Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have Ben and Laura with us. I'm Jim Fowler. I'm Director of Business Advisory at WTC Utah. I have the pleasure of facilitating today's conversation. If you're here for the first time, this weekly webinar series is intended to provide you with the latest information about trade and tariffs. You can view previous webinars on our YouTube channel. You can find updates to our tariff dashboard on our website, which we'll link in the chat for you. Today, we're excited to have Laura Kersiek, who is Chief Advisor with Trade Advisor. And of course, our Chief of Staff, Ben Collender, is going to walk us through the latest and greatest information on tariffs. So why don't we start there, Ben? Kick us off, won't you?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'm going to share my screen here. Most people here aren't new, but in case you are, this is our tariff dashboard. You can always follow along here at wtcutah.com/tariffs, where you could click along with us, have some fun. We also have our Friday webinar link here, so don't be selfish if you're getting this info and you find it useful. You know somebody else who would benefit from it, please feel free to share and have others join this webinar as well. To kick things off this week, we've got a bunch of updates that are relevant. One is on the 122 tariffs. So, as everybody's aware, these are the tariffs that end July 24th. Right now, they're slated to end on July 24th. They're a balance payments tariff, currently at 10%, though there have been some threats about maybe 15. The court, so there's been a lot of back and forth with filings and you know, are these tariffs legal, similar to the IEEPA situation? One thing to note here is that the order that was issued is that the stay was granted, in part because the court saw that there's a likelihood that, the government may win this case. So they issued the stay. Um, and that those tariffs are slated to end July 24th, but for now, expect to pay those tariffs. The final appeal decision is probably going to come sometime late summer, early fall, but for now, there's going to be no relief before then. And then we'll stay tuned for additional decisions then. So the next item to update the group on is USMCA. So we've been discussing for a while now that one of the situations is that Mexico is negotiating with the United States in a bilateral fashion. Canada hasn't really come to the table, though they're starting to have some informal conversations. Trump said this week he may not renew USMCA with Mexico and Canada. So this leans more and more towards a potential bilateral um, negotiation with Mexico, bilateral negotiation with Canada as well. The joint review is scheduled for July 1st. And so we continue to keep an eye on that. We do have Mexico, a couple of rounds of discussions with Mexico coming up, uh, in DC, actually next week on the 16th and 17th, and then July 20th. So we expect to hear more in the coming weeks about how discussions with Mexico are going as it relates to USMCA. And Canada has started some informal conversations. We've seen a little bit of that in the news, and we anticipate hearing more and more about what Canada's situation will be going into this joint review as well. IEPA, we were just talking about this in the pre-session. We had a judge, there was a hearing, judge made some comments. Basically, there's a lot of, it boils down to the conversation is that the Judge Eaton really wants to see these tariffs, the refunds from IEPA expedited. There seems to be some sentiment that the administration is going a little bit slower than otherwise needed. This is also a plug for World Trade Center Utah to say if you are having challenges on finding, getting your refund and you're hitting snags or you need some guidance, we're always here to help. Reach out to us. And we're happy to help. We've had a webinar on a click through on what to do if you get a snag. We know some folks who could be helpful on that front. So please feel free to reach out. Next item we have it's a couple of items in one. We've combined the 301s and the comments there with the trade board comments because these from what we've heard and what we've read, seem to be taking in the 301 comments to bring before the trade board. So, as you guys remember, the summit happened in China last month with President Trump, President Xi. And what the United States is really looking for is how do we have goods that we can trade that aren't going to harm the United States' national security? So they're seeking public comment not only on the 301s, which are open right now through July on the first list. They close yes on and yes they close here shortly, July 5th. So no, I don't have the exact date, but it's sometime. They're open right now. If you need to comment, you should. And then the comment on the board of trade is open until July 5th. And so they're seeking public comment to say which goods can be traded. So those two lists are kind of together. I know it's a little complicated, but we always encourage comment on these because if you want some sort of a legal recourse or want your voice heard at the federal level, this is really the way to do it on these trade deals. We can have back and forth about how unfair it is or how it's impacting your business, but unless you put in official comment, the federal government has no way to take those considerations into account. All right, we talked about steel and aluminum last week. The other item we have is that we have some public comments still open, one on Brazil that's open until July 1st. So if you are importing from Brazil and need to provide some comment, you know where to do it. You could just go on the dashboard, public comment right there. And I believe that's all we have for today. Let me just double check. Oh, one more. Sorry. Forced labor. We need to, if you have any comments, they're due on July 6th. So let me see right here. So you want it, you'll see that on our dashboard as well. You can go in, file public comment. So those are open until July 6th. Again, you want to provide comments so that um, your voice can be heard in this, and that your own particular situations can be accounted for as the federal government looks at what to do with these tariffs. So with that, I'll say we're tracking several other tariffs that are in the works, and we'll update as more details become available. I won't list them all out because they're pretty thorough, and I won't give Laura time to talk to us about mitigating mitigating tariffs in this climate. So I'll silence down and say thanks for your time, and Laura, off to you.
Thank you, Ben. Love that dashboard. It's amazing. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, my name is Laura Kersiek. I'm happy to be here and talk about some tariff mitigation tactics that you may or may not already be employing. And these are based on just exploring in my own experience in my own work with various companies. So here we have lots of people enjoying mitigating tariffs on this title slide. And let's jump in. So I've divided up the tactics between kind of these direct levers you can pull with customs and then indirect. I think in today's tariff world, customs and compliance professionals such as myself have been forced to jump back into the logistics realm and see where you can save money. So I'll talk about those after I talk about customs, direct customs levers you can pull. So one of the one of the ways I like to mitigate tariffs is by checking the later end you bookend chapters of the tariff code to see if there are any preferential duty programs that my products can apply to my products. So you have prototypes, testing and samples, and then of course the U.S. goods return uh, programs that you can leverage if you qualify. I would say that the compliance burden is a little more manageable on, for example, prototypes um, than USMCA compliance, for example. So if you're upset about maybe that going away and you're a company that is in the chapter of producing prototypes, this might be your saving grace. Um, the other lever that I've utilized or uh, explored utilizing are the making sure that, if you think you're subject to Section 232, make sure you dig down into those proclamations or those the Federal Register notices, and check the annexes to see the tariff codes that do not apply that tariff on steel, aluminum, copper, and semiconductors. So if you're a tech company and you're feeding your, data centers, equipment, materials, etc., um, you may be exempt from that. What is it now? It might be up to 25, 50. It changes all the time. Percent tariff under Section 232. Um, another thing that is actually relatively new, if you do business with FedEx, they're your carrier, you can go to their website and kind of find little Easter eggs of, these tools and different services that they offer. One such tool is the import tool, where they offer customers the ability to give them clearance instructions and verify your entries to make sure that the FedEx entry writer isn't overstacking tariffs. That was a really big problem last year when all of these IEEPA and reciprocal tariffs came down. I would look at some of my entries and just like be floored at the 95% tariffs being charged, even though my commercial invoice said, something to the tune of these don't apply or some of these don't apply. So those tools are really important to make sure that what you're actually billed for is what you agreed on. So yeah, I would recommend if you haven't looking into the FedEx import tool and the special brokerage program. You sign your company up and you can really you look at your import docs, you look at those entries, you verify them, and you can correct them. You can have a dedicated team at FedEx who you can talk to and say, "Hey, check this. This tariff rate shouldn't be on here. This duty shouldn't be on here." And you have like a window of time before the entry summary is submitted to customs to correct that, and those tariffs don't have to be outlaid. And then a couple more tariff engineering. That was like the saving grace of yesteryear, really, when reciprocal tariffs were going crazy. Not so much now, I would say. We're not trying to find different tariff codes or figure out what other origin your product could be to back into a different tariff code. I think, just keeping confirming your classifications where they're at and being aware of the classifications that can kind of dodge any of these existing, leftover tariffs that are still applicable, I think is really important. Just keep looking at your tariff codes and keep an eye on what are the problem children that are triggering lots of tariffs. And then when you're classifying, it can really be, Claude and, and ChatGPT are great points to start at when you're trying to figure out where in the world of the tariff code you belong in, what chapter. But as you finalize your tariff code, just keep it simple. Just classify based on the header, based on the essential character of your item and principal function. And then lastly, everybody probably knows about this, like your bonded warehouse and FTZ capability, even with World Trade Center here. There's opportunity to defer those duties and not even pay them when you re-export or ship your product internationally. And you can pick the entry or withdrawal rate you want to apply once you do have to pay that duty. You can pick the rate that applied when the goods entered the warehouse, or you can pick, you can roll the dice and pick, the withdrawal rate to apply to that re-export. Okay, so here's where it gets, into the logistics. Like if you're really, digging deep to try to find, ways to save money or offset your tariff spend, the fuel surcharge cap is something I've renegotiated with my carriers. Um, we saw USPS introduce an 8%, first ever 8% fuel surcharge this year, like a couple of months ago, on packages on some of their like marquee shipment services, international priority, etc. Um, and then yeah, I think FedEx went from like 20% to 27% in a matter of weeks. So just be aware, if you're not aware already, that you can negotiate a cap on that. I think for one company, they were able to negotiate like a 15% cap that I know about, just to give you an example. And then the fuel trigger threshold, feed these to your AI agent. We're not going to go, deep dive into these, but like fuel these into ChatGPT and learn more about them, because that trigger threshold is really important too. When you optimize your packaging and you talk with your carriers about when that trigger comes in, that gas surcharge comes in, and how it applies to your base rate, you could really save money. So yeah, I think that's all I'll say about that for now. Packaging and dim weight optimization kind of goes hand in hand, what I was talking about. The way that the fuel surcharges have recently been restructured, um, you have a lot of the surcharge applying to like a broader base of accessorials. And so if you might be seeing lighter but bigger packages, getting that surcharge applied. So yeah, just optimize your packaging and work with your carrier to reduce those thresholds and put a cap on those fuel surcharges, triggered by, international conflict and, surging oil prices. And then just you can always revisit your rates. It's amazing. There's three main, DHL, UPS, FedEx are usually, really sensitive to losing business with each other. So if anybody from one of those carriers is on, I hope I'm not misspeaking, but I think it's good to kind of have that competition and leverage it to your business's advantage. Um, so that's it. Any questions or uh, comments, or just come find me after this presentation, or I think do we have time for questions?
Yeah, we do. And I don't know the best way for folks to reach out to you if you want to share that, or we could also field inquiries through info@wtcutah.com and then just forward them your way as well, if you prefer.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
So,
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people have my last name. Find me on LinkedIn. Sorry, yeah, I didn't put my contact information. But yeah, I truly love collaborating with logistics and trade folks and the community. I just moved to Utah recently, and I'd love to, interact with folks in the industry and support the industry here. So yeah, would
well,
welcome. Yeah.
welcome to Utah, and you're already sort of plugging into the theme that we go for every webinar. We sort of say, it in a lot of this situation, this trade climate at first, businesses are just getting hit with this. And the hard thing to do is to stop for a second and think about going on offense. So it's the whole purpose of this webinar is for us to say, how does a business go on offense? And I raise that to say, one, if people have questions, now's the time to raise them in the chat or in the Q&A function. But also, this whole presentation is on that. And so thank you for that. But also, what do you think right now we have this climate coming up of all these 301s about to be implemented, or in process of implementation already. And the 122 is going away. It's up and down, it's left and
Yeah.
right. It's a lot. What's
Yeah.
the number one thing you would say of all the great information you shared? Is like, hey, pay attention to this. What's your crystal ball? That comes up quite a bit in these conversations. What would you like to point businesses, what to point their attention to in all of this? What would you say in what you're dealing with?
Well, pay attention to your dashboard, Ben. I
Yeah,
mean,
well, thanks. We'll take that plug anytime.
no,
Exit now.
honestly, not to, I honestly think your dashboard is a great place to start. Um, I always, as a compliance person, I've bookmarked the Federal Register website,
Mm,
and put filters on for anything related to trade or tariffs. I get emails, I get pinged. There's also the CSMS messages
yeah,
from ICE. You guys
that's
probably
right.
know about that. There is one law firm that I really like, and I get their newsletter. That you could get all kinds of newsletters, but it's Sandler Travis and Rosenthal. Um, Let me try to find their website, or if somebody else. Oh yeah, that's me. Thanks, Elizabeth. Um,
That's great. We have our attendees jumping in and it's our colleague Liz jumping in and putting in the LinkedIn.
yeah, yeah, they have a really good. They're on it. They really follow in real time what's happening with tariffs and trade. Um, And then I don't know if anybody's a member of ICPA, International Compliance Professionals Association. Again, this veers more into the customs compliance, industry or professionals. Um, but those guys are constantly putting out or pumping out events or webinars. The membership fee there is it's pretty affordable. So yeah, they talk a lot about in real time what's happening on Capitol Hill, um, and what's impacting importers and exporters in real time. Yeah, I mean it's hard. And then there's the news, like it's hard because things are changing so rapidly to keep track of everything. But I think yeah, from the dashboard to some of these, trade consortiums, like you can stay on top of everything pretty well.
Great. That's great
Hey,
to
Laura, I've got a question. Can you expand a little bit on how folks can go on offense in terms of FTZ or bonded warehouse? Obviously, to Ben's point, we're the grantee of the
Yeah,
Utah FTZ. We love talking about that, but would love your perspective on that.
yeah. Well, bonded warehouses are an easy plug and play solution. You can route your inventory, your imports, to a 3PL's warehouse that has a set up bonded warehouse. Um, And you basically just, it's an area of the 3PL's warehouse that is for folks that don't know what that is. It's kind of caged off or sequestered off, and your goods are entered into the 3PL system that kind of engages or integrates with customs, and you can keep your goods there for up to 5 years. And if you have outbound international orders that leave the warehouse, that's when you not pay the duty. That's when the duty is essentially, or the deferment of the duty is essentially erased, and you don't have to pay the duty on those. And then anything that is reshipped inside the US, that's when you pay the duty. And as I said earlier, you can pick, like, talk about crystal ball. If you think your duty rate is going to go down, your general duty rate on your good based on the tariff code. If you think it's going to go down or shift in a downward direction, you might want to, pick like paying the duty on withdrawal at the time that applies at withdrawal when you reship domestically, or you can lock in the duty that it entered the bonded warehouse on and pay that duty. So, I would just Google which 3PLs in Utah or whatever, wherever you're sourcing your goods, maybe close to the source of your goods. Like, where's a 3PL near there that has a bonded warehouse set up? And then with FTZ, like you got it right here, obviously with World Trade Center. Um, and as a grantee, I mean, I'm making the assumption like you guys have a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience with managing that process of getting your goods inside the zone and the security and system and inventory requirements that are required. And with FTZ, you're able to do a little bit more with your goods if you need to, final assembly type stuff before you reship them out. So, I mean, I like both of these options because, you're not alone. You don't have to go it alone. You have freight forwarders and WTC who can support processing your goods to avoid tariffs. And or avoid or defer them or not pay them at all. Um, well, it's the same thing, avoid and not pay them at all. Avoid or defer them. Um, yeah, I'm partial. Like if it's just in and out, I'm partial to bonded warehouse because the compliance burden and the process is so much easier if you have access to that. But FTZ is just as good and has tons of perks. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah,
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So you talk about with the bonded warehouse, you've got a 5-year window basically,
yeah,
in contrast to an FTZ where it's indefinite, where you can bring
yeah,
goods into an FTZ and they can sit there indefinitely until you figure
yeah,
out what you want to do with them. So that's one contrast.
yeah.
Um, but
It's great you guys have your FTZ. There's been a delay in getting new FTZs approved by FTZ by the board and um I don't know, there's the tide is changing. Like the Trump administration really wants to push US companies to not import and not take care of not to start producing more American or buy American or produce as an American company. So I don't know. It's good you have one because it's hard to apply for one and it's hard to get approved, is what I'm hearing. So yeah, great to take advantage of the existing one here.
We do our best to make it easy, but there were some
Uh,
delays. So, yeah. So, I don't know if we have any questions. Oh, I see one from John in the chat. Jim, you want to take that one and then bring us home?
sure, does WTC Utah manage its own FTZ warehouse with services available to importers? No, we do not manage our own warehouse. The beauty of the Utah FTZ is that we can take advantage of a rule that basically allows everyone with warehouse space within 60 miles or 90 minutes of the Salt Lake City airport can set up their own FTZ zone within the four walls of their own warehouse. So we'd love to talk to you more about that if you're interested.
And
We
I
can
would say,
walk
Jim,
through
if I
all of that.
can chime in on that point, that's one of the easier uses in non-complicated applications in the foreign trade zone. If you just want a warehouse and you're along the Wasatch Front, generally those are pretty quick and easy. So that use of the foreign trade zone is not typically too difficult. So
Right. Or if you want to find a third party that has their own, whether it's a 3PL or some other third party that has an FTZ and warehouse space available and can provide logistics services within that space, we can point you to those as well. So, yeah, happy to talk more. Let's get in touch. But our time is up. Thank you all for joining us. Quick reminder, next week we will not be having our trade and tariff webinar because of Juneteenth. Enjoy the holiday. But we look forward to seeing you the week after that. And thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Laura, for your presentation. And Ben, thank you. As always, talking about tariffs is never boring. There's always something new. So um, we'll post this recording on our YouTube channel, and you can all find this recording there. But let's stay in touch. Please reach out if you've got any questions. info@wtcutah.com. Thank you again. Appreciate you
Thanks.
all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.